Hello, Julia. I'm sorry you weren't feeling well today, and hope this little chat here will catch you up to where we are. We're starting chapter 4. Here's the goals for today. See if I can zoom in the other way. There we are. Our goals for today. And here's our assignment for today. And if I get a chance, I will put those problems up on the video as well. So let's look at what our notes will be. You can just take notes on a piece of paper, and when you get this handout, you can just slip them in your mod chapter 4 notes right behind day 1. So here we go. Let's look at what the topic starts at. We did sampling from populations. Let me get situated here. There we go. Sampling from populations. That's what we're going to title it. So take notes, please. And we found out that we had to identify what a population was and what a sample was. So a population is the entire group from which, let me zoom out, wrong way. All right. If the population is an entire group from which information is wanted of some kind. And then, since we can't reach the entire group, we are going to use what's called a sample. So a sample is part of the population used to draw conclusions about the entire population. So we're going to take a portion of that population and ask our questions, and we are going to design that sample so that it will be representative of the whole population. All right, after that definition, we took some practice identifying these different populations and samples from examples. So to identify the population, the example, we talked about things like, say I'm a furniture maker and I get large batches of wood, and I got this large batch of wood and I am going to open it up, and there's so many in it I couldn't test every one, but I'm going to test, say, 5. And I pull out 5 pieces of wood and I test it for moisture content. And if any one of those 5 has more than 10% moisture, I'm going to send the whole batch back. So we talked about an example like that, and we said, what would the population be and what would the sample be? And the answer was, the population is all the pieces of wood in one batch. And the sample are the 5 that I chose to test from that population. Another example we did was taking a poll. They like to make statistics for the whole country. So they will send out a question. They will address a question to, say, 60,000 people across the United States, and in that they're looking to see who is employed and who is unemployed to figure out the national average for percent of unemployment. So who or what is the population, what is the sample in that case? In that case, the population is the entire United States, and the sample is the 60,000 that were chosen to answer the question. So we're going to identify populations and samples. Right after that, we talked about batches of woods, and there we have a study of 60,000 people from the United States, and that's CPS. CPS means current population survey. Not all that important. All right, let's talk about how we pick our sampling. We'll start with poor sampling techniques, and the very first one I talked about could be exemplified by, say I wanted to know what percentage of people in New Covenant Christian upper school that have graphing calculators. So I'm sitting in our stat class and I say, well, I'll just survey the 6 students here. So 6 out of 60 will give me a pretty good fair view of how many or what percentage have graphing calculators. And lo and behold, they all had graphing calculators. And that meant that 100% of the students in New Covenant Christian School have graphing calculators. Now obviously that was a poor sample, and that kind of sample is called a convenience sample. A convenience sample is a sample where you're choosing the easiest people. That doesn't have to be people, but normally people could be animals or things in your population. But I'm choosing those easiest to reach. So if I say I want to know how many people in Maryland are going to vote a certain way, so I go and stand in front of the mall, and I'm going to ask the first 200 people that walk through the door. Once again, there's convenience in that, but there's also a strong bias in that. And a bias is a study that favors a certain outcome because there's something unique about all of those people that walked into that mall at that time, the first 200 people. So they all had money to shop, they all lived in a certain area, etc. So convenience sampling is normally very biased and is not a good study. So a study that it favors certain outcomes is the bias, and we are to avoid bias at any cost. All right, as statisticians. Another poor sampling technique is voluntary response sampling. So a voluntary response sample is like what its name says. It is when the responses come from volunteers. In other words, the participants choose themselves by responding to an appeal. For example, I'm on a radio program and I'll say, I want to know what this nation feels about Ben Carson. So please call in and tell me what you think about Ben Carson. And sure enough, I get immediately the phone rings and I get 40 responses. But do you see that that is a biased study as well? Because these people were obviously opinionated and motivated to answer that question. So they must have had either a pretty high or a pretty low opinion about them in most cases. So a volunteer response sample often is very biased, and we will avoid it. Same thing like if in a newspaper they have, the editor will say, write in and tell me your opinion on some issue. I don't know, illegal aliens working at Chick-fil-A or whatever. And the people who feel strongly are going to take the time and make the effort to write in, or to write in and respond. So it is a biased way to find a sample. All right, this is getting so depressing, all these horrible sampling techniques. So let me close down this video and recover, and I will start on part 2 with a wise sampling technique.